Hello, my name is Penny Johnson, and this is the video lesson plan for Biology 7440 Evolution. This particular lesson is given to 9th graders in biology. Evolution is taught second semester, and this particular lesson is about a week into our evolution unit. They've learned about fossils up to this point. They know what is involved in the making of a fossil, what a fossil is, what kind of information we get from the fossil. They've learned that up until this point, and this lesson is designed to allow them to link the fossils of ancient organisms to modern organisms, and to kind of fully appreciate what the fossil record tells us about the evolution of the modern animals and plants and things that we see around us today. And so that's the purpose of this lesson, to help them do that. It is a relatively interactive lesson where we get a lot of feedback from the students, so I'll kind of fill in for that part of it as we go through this lesson. First, we're going to start with a review of what we know about fossils. So the first question I'll ask is, what is a fossil? And if you remember from what we've learned previously, fossils are the remains, whether it be the physical remains or an impression or a trace of an ancient organism. It can be footprints, it can be actual bony structures, it can be the impression of a leaf or a feather. And the right set of circumstances have to be in place in order for these fossils to be formed. What information can fossils give us? Fossils can give us a lot of information. First of all, it gives us the anatomy of ancient organisms, so we can learn about their anatomical structures. But it can also tell us what geologic time period those particular organisms can be found in. It can also tell us what they ate, how they lived, what other organisms may have lived with them that they interacted with. So there's a lot of things that we can learn from the fossil record. Is the fossil record complete? Frankly, no. The fossil record is not complete for two main reasons. First of all, that circumstances that create a fossil, in which a fossil is made, are very, very specific. Certain things have to happen in a certain order and in a certain period of time in order for fossils to be made. Not every ancient organism died under those conditions so that a fossil could be made from them. So we can infer that not all ancient organisms have left fossil remains behind, because they didn't all die under the right circumstances for fossils to be made, but also because we haven't found every fossil that's out there. There are still fossils to be found. People are finding fossils every day, so we haven't even found the complete set of fossils that are out there. So for those two big reasons, a fossil record is not complete. But just because it's complete doesn't mean that it doesn't give us valuable information. It doesn't mean that we're not always learning from them and expanding on our knowledge. So let's go ahead and kind of see what the fossil record can tell us about ancient organisms and go from there. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to Pakicetus. Pakicetus. Go ahead and say Pakicetus. Pakicetus. This guy lived 55 million years ago. 55 million years ago. I want you to take a minute now to take a look at this picture of him. This is an artist's rendition. This is an artist's interpretation based on information given to him or her, what Pakicetus may have looked like in its physical format. You can also see a skeleton of the fossilized skeleton of Pakicetus. So you can see how his bony architecture is. So what kind of words would you use to describe Pakicetus? Do you think he lives on the land or in water? Is he terrestrial or marine? What do you think he eats? How do you think he finds his food? What modern organism do you think he is? What ancient relative of which modern animal do you think he is? Now, based on the ideas and the thoughts and the hypotheses that you've developed just based on this picture, what is it in these pictures that caused you to have those thinking? Typically, when we go through this and we learn about Pakicetus, we look at him. He's covered in fur. He's got ear flaps. He's got a long snout. We can see he's got very sharp teeth. He's got 4 legs, claws on the end of his paws. He's got a nice long tail. So a lot of times we deduce that he is a terrestrial animal. He lives on the land. And we can look at his teeth and we can think that he probably eats meat because he's got nice pointy teeth. His legs, his body structure, his body architecture makes us think that he can probably run pretty fast, so he's probably a hunter. He's got a tail and he's got fur, so he might need the fur to stay warm, so he might live in a cold environment. And a lot of students think that he is an ancient hyena. They think he looks like a modern hyena. He gives the idea of a modern hyena. And so a lot of students think that he's either a dog or a hyena or something along those lines based on the way his physical appearance is. And so that's Pakicetus. And he was around 55 million years ago. Next we have Ambulocetus. Ambulocetus. Say Ambulocetus. Now this guy, he lived 50 million years ago, so he's a little bit younger than Pakicetus, and he's been around for about 50 million years ago. And again, you can see the artist's rendition of what he may have looked like, his physical shape and physical characteristics. You can also see a drawing of the skeletal remains that they have found fossilized. So I ask you to do the same thing. Think of these same three questions. What words would you use to describe Ambulocetus physically? Do you think Ambulocetus was terrestrial or marine? What do you think Ambulocetus ate? How do you think he found his food? What modern day animal do you think Ambulocetus is related to? Is he the ancient relative of what type of modern animal? Which modern animal? Now, what is it about his anatomical features that you see about the skeleton in the skeleton or in the artist's drawing that caused you to make the hypotheses you did about where he lived and how he ate and what modern animal he's related to? Typically, we take a look at this guy and we see that he's covered in fur and he's got a nice long flat snout. He's got sharp teeth. He has got a nice long flat tail, flat body. We notice that his legs, the positioning of his legs, his body structure is kind of flat and squat, and that his limbs come out from the sides of his body rather than pointing straight down. They come out to the sides and go down. A lot of students tend to think that this guy lives on the land, predominantly lives on the land, and I think it's the fur and the forelegs. But notice his feet. Take a look at his feet. He seems to have webbing between his toes. So based on that anatomical feature, a lot of students think that he spends some time in the water. He's got some sort of that webbing in his feet give him some sort of advantage in the water, so he must run into the water and be somewhat successful in the water based on the webbing on his feet. So they think that he's an animal that lives on land but goes into the water. And he may go into the water to get his food. That might be how he gets his food. He's got that nice long snout with the sharp teeth, so they tend to think he's a meat eater. Now, a lot of students feel like, based on his body structure with those legs, particularly the legs coming out from the sides of the body and going down, and his nice flat head and snout, a lot of students think that he's an ancient alligator or crocodile because of his body, the way his body is shaped. And so that's usually where we go with Ambulocetus, thinking he's an ancient alligator. Next, we have Rhodocetus. Now, Rhodocetus is from time period 40 million years ago, so we're moving closer to present time as we go along. And Ambulocetus is drawn in this picture. The artist has him drawn in water. So as we think about our describing words that we use to describe this organism, we think about whether or not he lives on the land or he lives in the water. Because the artist drew this picture of him in the water, we tend to take that at face value and think that he's a marine animal. We can look again, we can see his skeletal structure. He does have limbs. He's got front legs and back legs. And he's got a nice, again, a pointy snout with sharp teeth. So as we continue thinking about the same set of questions with Rhodocetus, we tend to think he's a marine animal. His feet and legs do not seem to be very conducive to living on land. If he were to go out on land, we tend to think that he might be pretty awkward, because while he does have legs and they are structured like legs, those feet are very flipper-like. And so he's probably very graceful, very ambulatory in the water. Probably can move very quickly in the water because of those flipper-type feet. And he's probably very awkward out on land. So he probably doesn't go out on land, and if he does, it's probably very rarely. We do tend to think that he is a meat eater, again, because looking at his teeth, they're sharp for tearing meat. That nice long skinny snout, we might think that he goes into very small crevices maybe to get that long skinny snout down into holes and little cracks between rocks to get his prey as he eats them. A lot of students take a look at him, and particularly at his head and that long skinny mouth that he has. And a lot of students tend to think that he might be an ancient eel with legs. That this is an ancient eel that before the eel lost his legs. We don't have any size, any way for us to determine size for this guy, so he may have been quite small. We take a look at his tail, and again, it's long and it narrows, it tapers to a point. So a lot of students tend to think that this might be an ancient eel that that still has legs, hasn't lost its legs yet, based on those anatomical structures. And that's Rhodocetus, and he was around 40 million years ago. Next we have Balasaurus. Balasaurus, you can say Balasaurus. He was alive 36 million years ago, still quite a long time ago, but we're moving forward in time a little bit here. So this is Balasaurus, and again, the artist has him drawn in water, but if we take a look at those physical characteristics that he has, there's a lot of fish and marine type features that this guy has that makes us think he spends all of his time in the water. So when we address that question, is he terrestrial or marine, we typically hands down say that he is a marine animal based on his flippers and his tail. He doesn't look, this artist has not drawn him looking furry, so we tend to think that he doesn't have fur. So as we describe that, we can see that he doesn't have fur. Again, we can look at his mouth, and we can see kind of sharp, much smaller teeth, but they still are sharp. So he might be a meat eater, though he's living in a marine environment, he might still be a meat eater. We also take a look at the picture, and we can see bubbles coming from his nose, his snout, and so that lends us to think that he is an oxygen-breathing animal that lives in the water. So a lot of students take a look at that tail and take a look at the flippers and the fact that he breathes oxygen. And if we were to link him to a modern animal based on those anatomical features, a lot of students think that this is an ancient dolphin. And Balasaurus is an ancient dolphin. One of the things I do like to point out to students when we're looking at this, first of all, I am just completely amazed at the length of that backbone. Take a look at that skeleton. Look at that backbone. Look how long it is. Makes me wonder how vulnerable it is to breaking, or how he moves it, how he uses it. He must be very dexterous in the marine environment. You can also see, I like to highlight these kind of back fins that he has that are, again, on the sides of the body, coming out of the side of the body, similar to his front flippers. He's got these back flippers that are on the left and the right side of his body that seem kind of an interesting placement for a fish. You know, not a lot of fish have those kind of things. So I do like to point those out to students as well. And we can talk about what purpose they might have had. Does he use them for steering? Why are they there? What purpose? What does he gain from having those appendages on either side of his body, at the back end of his body? Finally, I show you a picture of a modern-day whale. And this is a baleen whale. Baleen whales include the blue whales, the humpback whales, the gray whales, and the right whales. And would it surprise you to know that all of the animals that we have looked at, Pakicetus, Rhodocetus, Balasaurus, they're all ancient whales, including the one with fur and 4 legs. Ancient whales, all of them. How do we know that? How do we know that this furry, dog-looking creature that lived 55, 60 million years ago, how do we know that that is an ancient whale? There is nothing whale-like about Pakicetus. How do we link that together with modern whales? Well, here you can see a cladogram, and what a cladogram is, and we'll learn more about cladograms as we go through evolution, and particularly when we get into classification and diversity. We see that a cladogram is basically a picture that shows evolutionary relationships. And here we have a cladogram of the whales, and you can look here and you can see all the way down the line. We've got at the very bottom, we've got modern whales, and we can go up and we can just kind of see how their body, the whale body, has changed and evolved and developed from what Pakicetus, who looks like a dog, who lived on land, to a modern whale. And we can kind of see that the gradual changes as they go through. And every one of these animals are ancient whales. Now, how do we know that these are ancient whales? What is it? What makes the scientists say that? Well, we look at the fossil record, and there's evidence found in the fossil records all the way back to Pakicetus that links all of these animals together, and then ultimately to the modern whale. Now, here I show a video clip, and it's a 5-minute video clip taken from the full-length video, Evolution, the Great Transformation. I usually stream it from this particular website, and it is a clip that highlights Dr. Gingrich, who is a paleontologist who did a lot of work with whale fossils that he found in the Valley of the Whales in Egypt. And it takes the students kind of down the line where he shares with them the discovery of this particular bone that he found in a wolf-looking creature. A wolf-type creature that they thought was probably an ancient wolf. He found this ear bone. And in this ear bone, they found that it was the same bone in the same location as a modern whale. And then they looked at all of these other fossils that they found, and all of these other fossils had this same ear bone. And this ear bone links all of the fossils, all of the animals that we've talked about in this lesson together, and links them to modern whales because of this anatomical feature that they found in the fossil record. And it's a very good video clip that kind of walks them right down that line to show them how we link things together that way. And then it also talks about other fossil evidence and physiological evidence, as in the way a whale moves, and compared it to the way dogs and land mammals move as compared to the way a fish moves, the way their body moves when they run and when they swim. And so they show that it's not just the fossil record that links all of these animals together as ancient whales, but there's other evidence, physiological and so forth, that also links these animals together. It's a very well done little video clip that's kind of a nice augmentation to this lesson. So that is the ancient whale, and here we've got the organisms that we studied, Pakicetus, Ambulocetus, Rhodocetus, Balasaurus, and then the modern whale, and we've linked them all together as ancient animals. As ancient whales. I want you to take a look at their legs, and we can see, again, Pakicetus has legs that look like they're built for running, and Ambulocetus with his webbed feet and the structure, the way his legs are attached to his torso, we tend to think that he might have been spending some time in the water, especially with those webbed toes. And here we can see a different angle with him swimming, with those back legs kind of back for him swimming. Then we get to Rhodocetus, and we can see those same back legs, that same kind of back leg characteristic they're on the lateral side, on the sides of the body. So we can kind of see those hind legs getting smaller, and then disappearing until we get to our modern whale. But I want you to take a look at the skeleton of that modern whale, and I want you to notice something about that skeleton. What do you see? While we don't on the outside of the modern whale, we don't see those hind appendages like we see in the ancient ones, there are skeletal remnants of those hind legs. And those are vestigial limbs. Vestigial, if you'll recall from previous lesson, vestigial means it is a body part that is around that's not used. It's kind of left over from the ancient organisms. And while we can't see those hind limbs on modern whales, they do still have the bones that say throughout evolutionary history that say that those limbs used to be there. The other thing I want to again kind of show you with the organisms that we've studied in this lesson, just like in the video clip how it talked about how the nostrils moved from Pakicetus, where they were in the front of the nose, they kind of the nostrils kind of migrated as the body structure changed in the whale, and the whale went from living on land to the water. He didn't develop gills. He's still a mammal. He's still breathing oxygen, so that the nostrils had to move to such a position that there was an advantage that they could still breathe in the water. And so you can kind of see again with the organisms that we studied in this particular lesson, you can kind of see how those nostrils just gradually made their way back until they were on the top part of the head, so that the whale could breathe successfully in the water. So as we look at these guys and we see how the evolution of the whale has come about, I want you to think about why these particular traits that we've looked at, namely Ambulocetus' webbed feet, or the flippers that Balasaurus or Rhodocetus have, and the movement of the nostril to higher up on the head. What kind of advantages could those traits have given them? For example, think about Ambulocetus. If he lived on land but had to go into the water, whether it be a predator that sent him to the water or because that's where he got his food, do you think those that had great webbing were more successful at escaping predation or more successful at swimming and finding food than those who may not have had the best webbed feet? So as we look at those and we get more involved in natural selection and favorable traits, if you look at the change in the whale's body, we might see how advantages could have been gained by these particular individuals that promoted the development of webbing, ultimately flippers, that promoted the disappearance of those hind legs and the development of that back tail and the movement of the nostrils. We might see how those that had the best of those traits were the most successful and produced the most offspring, and again passed those traits on to the point where we actually have a change in the anatomy of the whale. So it's very interesting to think that the modern whale actually started out on land. Thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate it. I hope you learned a lot. I hope this gives you something to think about and to talk about, and I will see you next time. Again, this is Penny Johnson, video lesson for Biology 7440, Evolution.